Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of my hand history review of my biggest win ever. At this stage in the tournament, we are at the mid stages, which is the chip accumulation portion of the tournament. If you haven't yet watched part 1, I invite you to go back and check it out to see how we got to this point, and also because there's a lot of gems in there that are gonna help you improve your tournament play. So with the formalities out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the action, shall we?
All right. 6-4 is a fold. King 3, I know it's a fold. Queen 8, I know it's a fold. 5-4, anywhere but the big blind, it's definitely a fold. But if someone, min raises and we get a good price, we'll be good. So 4-6 suited. I think given the stack size, I probably fold. I don't really like min raising or raising for steals with less than 15 big blinds. That's kind of my cutoff for when I'll usually stop going for steals. With some rare exceptions, the later on in the tournament, the more value there is to going for steals, but early on in the tournament, it's not really worth it. The amount of chips you pick up isn't going to make that big of a difference in terms of your odds of winning, so it's better to not take the variance. But I am curious if it's a profitable shove, because we only have 2 players to get through. We have a hand that, we have suited cards and kind of connected cards, so we have about a 20-some% chance. But they are small cards, and generally small cards are not going to do as well as big cards. When we're going for the open shove, we'd rather have, King 4 than 6-4 because it does a better job of sucking out against pocket jacks, 10s, 9s, the hands that will call us. The problem with shoving the small suited connectors is that when you are called, you are so often dominated. Like really bad. Like your best case is you're going to be 70-30 where they have 2 overcards, but if they have a pair, you have 20% chance of winning, and that's just too low. That's just too low for all-ins. Yeah, we fold and on to the next hand. And see, it's good to double check the spots in the softwares. I had my reasons for folding, and then it's always nice when the math backs up the reasons, because then you just feel better about your decision. All right, ace-3 suited. We probably would have called there. I'm going to run this one in ICMizer as well, actually, just to show you guys. Ape styles on 7 blinds should be shoving quite a lot of hands here. And because he's shoving a lot of hands, we're supposed to call with a lot of hands as well. So we're just going to copy paste this into ICMizer. Oh yeah, we're going to change his action to all in. So calculate Nash. So blind versus blind with 7 bigs. Ape styles should shove. I'm not going to use the word should because you should never do anything in poker. You can. He can shove almost 80% of hands profitably and expect to make a profit. That's really wide. And so because of that, not only are we calling with ace-3 suited, we expect to win 2.5 big blinds by calling with ace-3 suited. But you see, we could be calling with jack high here and expecting to make chips. 10-8 offsuit expecting to make chips. And when ranges are really wide, your chances of winning, your equity are so much higher. And that's why we would call there. All right, so on to the next hand, where we have aces, the best hand in the game. And we get a tough spot facing a 15 big blind shove. What are you going to do? Get her in there. Aces. Wow. Oh man, I remember watching this one in the video and being like, oh my god, it's such a sweat. I remember in the moment just being like, don't hit the churn or river. I was scared. If you watch me in the video, I'm like all chatty. I'm just like, maybe if I don't do anything, they won't notice me and they'll let me win. That was a sweat, man. Great to hold there, though. That was key. Bumped us back up to over 20 big blinds, so we have a little bit of play. We have the reshove stack, as we talked about. In the arsenal of weapons, we now have the rejam available. Yeah. Queen Jack. I think I'm open it. Okay, I think I like folding here. We do have Queen and Jack, so we do block Ace Queen and Ace Jack. But off a 20-something big blind stack, even with there being antes out there, I don't like this open. I think I'm too shallow. I think each chip is too precious at this point. Jack-10 suited, on the other hand, is a much better hand. Queen-Jack suited, much better hand. Jack-10 suited, much better hand. So I know Ape Styles is defending wide. He's getting incredible odds, just as we were before. He only needs 20% equity. He's probably defending like 70% of hands. He's probably defending 70% of hands. We want to see what 70% of hands looks like. He's probably defending like that. So we can see that our Jack-10 suited is doing pretty decent against that range, 52%. But the big thing to look at here is how often he hits this board. So the board is ace 6-4, and we look at how often he's made a pair or better. And we see if we give him weak pair, I mean, we could just look at, he has no made hand 56% of the time, which means he's probably just going to fold 56% of the time. And therefore, we can bet half the pot and expect to turn a big profit. We don't even bet half the pot. We go even smaller. We bet like a quarter of the pot, man. 900 into 3,400. How often does my bet need to work there to be successful? Let's see. Let's get the old calculator. 900 div 4,300. Our bet needs to work 21% of the time. And if he's just folding all his complete misses, he's folding 56% of the time. Even if we narrow his range down to, say, 50%, he's still missing the board half the time. Even if we narrow his range down to 30%, he still has no hand half the time. Even if we give a super tight defending range, 20%, because it's a board where it's just ace, rag, rag, he has no made hands so often that our c-bet's going to work a ton. We have a lot more aces in our range than he does. Therefore, he's going to fold to us more often. He has to respect our range versus his range. And because there are no real draws, I didn't have to go big. If this board was like 10-6-4 and there's more potential for overcards to come up, I'm going to choose a bigger bet size. If it was ace-6-4 with a flush draw, I would have bet a little bit bigger to charge him on the times he has a flush draw. But because there's no draw and there's no real scare cards that can come, I can choose an extremely small sizing. Okay, this is a spot where I think it's an easy call, but I want to show you guys what ICMizer has to say. I'm saying he's going to shove with any pair. We're dominating a lot of those pairs. We're putting in 4K, 5K to win 13K. So we see we need 36% chance of winning. And so we just pull up our poker tracker, double click the hand, select it, keyboard shortcuts, Control A, Control C, ICMizer, paste the hand. This is what they say he should be shoving. And we see that against that range, we can just calculate pocket eights is netting us 3 big blinds. Huge call. You can't deny that. If you're making 3 big blinds with a hand, you got to call. The times where you're making, you know, like barely any chips here, like a 10th of a big blind, a 20th of a big blind, those ones you can say, I don't want to play those. Like you can say, you know, if it's anything less than half a blind, you put in 500 here. Then it will knock out those hands so they're not green anymore. So that's pretty sweet. You can say, I only want to get in there if I'm making at least a quarter of a big blind, and then those hands will be green. You could say, I only want to get in there if I'm making a whole big blind off the hand. Boom. And then the hands that are still profitable will stay dark green and the other ones will fade out. Incredible software. Incredible software. So we call, we flop a full house, it was a flip, and we get all the chips. Golfer Poker asks, you know, why should Ape Style shove really wide here? And the reason is because of the risk reward. He's only putting in 4,000 and he can pick up 1,500. Now, even when he's called for the 4,000, right? There's going to be 4,300. We have to call 3,700. So there's going to be 8,600 plus 600. So his 4,300 plus our 4,300 plus 600. It's going to be 9,200 chips in the middle. He's putting in 4,000 to win that. 4,000 div 9,200. So he needs a 43% chance of winning if he gets called. So because there's all that extra money and he has a lot of overlay from the pot, a lot of extra refund money coming, he can shove with a lot of hands. The main reason, though, that he should shove almost any two is because, think about what hands am I probably going to call him with? Top 20% means I'm folding 80% of the time. If I'm calling with the top 30, I'm folding 70% of the time. And every time that I'm folding, he's picking up 1,500 chips. And every time I'm calling, he's still getting overlaid. Deuce Jack's a fold. King 4, maybe a shove blind versus blind, but in that spot it's fold. Queen 6, we got a fold. 7-4 is a fold Reno. Pocket 8s again. Okay, so this is the one that we want, and now we're caught up. King Jack suited. We go for an open, get jammed. I remember this one we were literally right on the bubble, and that's why even though I could open shove this hand and expect to make chips, I didn't want to do that because on the times I get called and I'm busted from the tournament, I make no money. Whereas if I min raise, I'm probably still going to get the raise through almost as often. But on the times I don't get it through, instead of losing my whole stack or having to play or losing my whole stack, 2/3 of the time for the times I don't get there and all in, I only lose 2 chips. So the reward is pretty much the same. The risk is lower. And most importantly, the variance is much smaller. But if we say player goes all in and we say that no action, there, we just have him as the big blind. We can calculate if it's profitable. I'm almost certain it's profitable to shove suited Broadway for 20 blinds. But just because a play is profitable doesn't mean that it's the best play, right? We make less than a big blind by making this play, and we can probably get a similar amount just by min raising. So just because the program says you can make chips doing this doesn't mean you have to do it. It's just saying if you do this, it's not a losing play. It's not a mistake. But this program cannot tell you if it is the best play. It can just tell you how many chips you would expect to gain should you make this shove. The other part, you need to use your intuition. Is it better to min raise here, or 2.5x, or 3x, or jam, or limp? That you really got to figure out on your own. Queen Jack, what do we got? Here we're getting a great price. This hand. This is a very interesting hand. This is a very interesting hand. So, first, Queen Jack, 20%, we're going to defend. We got 2 Broadway cards. We're getting 4-1. We're going to defend. We only need a 20% chance of winning. Flopzilla is going to be our companion for this one. Flopzilla is our friend for this one. So what do we think Lucky Luke is opening here? Is the first thing we need to figure out. Well, he started the hand with 12 blinds. So I think if he had a pocket pair, he's just going to rip. I think he's going to shove his small pairs. In fact, he should shove a lot of his decent pairs too. So I think he's going to raise the hands he's trying to induce with, that he wants action with, his best pairs. I think he's going to raise, it's interesting, ace king may just shove. Ace queen may just shove. I think he's raising a lot of medium strength hands that aren't quite good enough to shove, but that have, blockers that are decent as steals. Because I think if he had ace king, king queen, ace queen, ace jack, he'd just shove with those hands. He has 12 blinds. Why not just go all in with them? So I'm actually not going to put those in his range. I'm going to put the more fringe hands in his range. I think these should go all in too. Let's go with these hands. What do you guys think? Should we give him some 10-9, some jack-9s? These ones. Maybe a couple suiteds. Nothing crazy. Because we have to recognize, right? When someone opens, they have multiple ranges. He has an open shoving range, and he has an open raising range. And whatever hands are in the shoving range cannot be in the open raising range. That's where the range splits. And it's up to us to decide what that range looks like. So we have Queen Jack, and against this range, we have 50% equity. So easy to defend. Even if we put in the big hands, we're still going to have way more than the 20% equity that we need. We'll probably have like 35 or something. 46. So we got tons. But I think these hands are just shoving in, so I'm going to take them out of the range. All right, so we defend, we check, and he c-bets. King 9 deuce. And let's look at this spot. So there's 10,000 in the middle. If we jam, we're risking 13,000 to win 10,000. But let's not forget, if we get called, we have some equity. So against a call, we're going to have about 20% chance of winning. So again, we have our same formula. It's how often does he fold? How often does he call? When he calls, what are we doing? We're winning a 30K pot 20% of the time. We're losing our stack 80% of the time. But there's also the times that he just folds. So in this spot, I felt that first, with most of his hands that smash this board, the top pairs and stuff, they're just shoving pre-flop. So I think for the most part he missed. Let's put in the King 9 deuce board. We see he has just mid pair and better. Okay, mid pair and better 60% of the time. But the question is he calling with middle pair? And if he's not calling with middle pair, he only has a hand 35% of the time. And if he's not calling with a pocket pair below the king, he's actually only calling 28% of the time. And that's why I made this play. That's why I made this play. Because I'm risking 14 to win 24. So my bet needs to work 58% of the time, 60% of the time. But we see that if this is his range of hands, and he's not, and for him to be calling me 40% of the time, he needs to be calling me with pocket pairs below top pair and some mid pairs. If he's calling me with mid pair, well, I'm not in great shape in terms of getting enough folds. You know, I'm 5% off. But because I still get there 20% of the time, it's a profitable play. And when he's calling with mid pair, I actually have even more equity, right? Against the mid pair calling range, I'm gonna have 42%. You know, we gotta lock this in. Against the mid pair calling range, I have 30%. If we get rid of the mid pair in the mix, now my equity is only 24%, but it's still enough. Do you guys see how, with the fact that you can get there, combined with the fact that they're just folding a lot of the time, that in spots where you think most of the time they're gonna fold, you can make these aggressive plays. And just for fun, let's give him the full range and see how it changes things. Let's give him all the good hands. So now he has mid pair better still like 50% of the time. In fact, even with the stronger range, he's now calling us less of the time because he's got more hands that missed. Yeah, he's got more pairs of kings, but he has more of these ace high hands that missed. These ace queens, ace jacks and stuff. So again, if he's calling us with mid pair, we have 27% chance of winning. If he's not calling us with mid pair, we have 23% chance of winning. But either way, it's enough. So we make the play and he folds. I also felt that if he had a stronger hand, he would bet small because he'd want to induce me to make a play. And I felt with this size, he was kind of trying to push me off of the pot. And it just, in the moment, it felt like it was a bluff. And that's why I acted on it. I'm not going to shove with a gut shot every single time here. Backdoor flush draw helps. But I just felt in the moment, I'm like, you know what? I think he's going to fold. And if you guys watch the replay, I'm just like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And it's important to trust your gut. You know, there's timing things. There's a lot of factors that are going on in play that your instincts are processing. And the more you've played poker, the more situations you've been in, the more your instincts are going to be accurate, and you should just trust them. Generally, the play is going to be rooted in mathematics. We saw that it is profitable to go with that play, but that doesn't mean we have to because it's very high risk. And that's where your instincts are going to be the difference maker, where they're like, yes, totally go for it, or no, stay away from it.
All right, and that wraps up part 2 of my hand history review of my biggest win ever. Really like what I'm seeing in my play so far in this tournament. I'm getting creative, I'm going outside the box. My 4 key takeaways from this video were the dangers of shoving with small suited connectors, just how wide I can actually shove blind versus blind, and also how wide I can call blind versus blind. How to adjust my bet sizing post flop based on the different board textures and how many draws are possible. And finally, how to use Flopzilla to find profitable post flop bluffing opportunities. A lot of good stuff in there to be sure. But I'm sure I'm not the only one who learned something from this video. I'm sure you did too. So please let me know in the comments section what your key takeaway was from this video or any feedback you have about my play. And if you're enjoying this series and getting benefit from it, please give me a thumbs up and let me know how I'm doing. And when you're done with that, you know what to do. Watch the full experience live as it happens so that you can get inspired, and then take what you learned, go out there and get stacking. I'll see you next week for part 3, where we're gonna go from the mid stages of the tournament to the late stage of the tournament and how to approach the bubble.